I'm Nick Davis, the director-producer of Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived, and you're watching Mr. Media.
I'm a lifelong baseball fan whose heroes were Mickey Mantle of the Yankees and Tom Seaver of the Mets. Now, I never met Ted Williams, but I did have a book I wrote, Stadium for Rent, enshrined in the Ted Williams Hitters Hall of Fame at Tropicana Field here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, if you love baseball as much as I do, there will be moments in Nick Davis's new documentary, Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived, that will make you choke up and maybe even bring a tear to at least one eye. It is extremely well done, compacting the life of one of sport's most accomplished, most competitive, most combative characters into a mesmerizing hour. Boston Red Sox fans won't be able to resist the continuity of Wade Boggs talking about Ted Williams, or that one of the film's executive producers is Big Papi himself, David Ortiz. And yes, Davis even manages to squeeze in a discussion of why the Williams family cryogenically saved Ted's head. You know, the frozen splinter. Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived, narrated by Mad Men star Jon Hamm, premieres on Monday, July 23rd at 9 p.m. on your local PBS television station. After that, you can see it online at pbs.org/American Masters and on PBS apps. Nick Davis, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. I did not realize that you were a Tom Seaver fan. I grew up; he was my absolute idol.
See that we're bonding already.
There you go.
You slipped him into the movie too, I noticed.
Yes. you noticed. We do. We have some shots of the 1969 All-Star Game, and have Seaver and Koosman are there talking to Ted Williams, who was the manager that year of the Washington Senators. And we're making a point about Joe DiMaggio, who was that year named the greatest living ball player. But when I saw the footage, I was like, you got to put Seaver in them. You know, I told the editor, Josh Freed, who did such a magnificent job editing the film, I think we're going to put Tom Seaver in the film.
Well, I'm glad you pointed out that it was Koosman with him, because I watched it with my wife last night, and I said, wow, it's Koosman and Seaver with Ted Williams. And I went, wow. And then I thought, I didn't admit this, but I thought, I'm pretty sure it was Koosman. Yeah, I don't know Koosman's face as well as I know Seaver's after all these years. But
right.
Good. I'm glad that's who it was.
Yes.
But actually, my number one takeaway from the film was the number of times that we see Ted Williams swing a bat. Now, at the beginning, there's this repetition of the swing, and then, well, it's not a drama, so I'm not giving anything away by saying you return to that at the end of the film. I did kind of wonder if you knew how many times he takes a swing in the film, because it was kind of interesting. It's like a good Entertainment Weekly question. And then also, if there was something you were getting at with the repetition at the beginning and the end of the swing.
Yes. Well, he swings in the film 406 times.
Oh, wow.
No.
Oh, no, that's not true. That would be great, though, if it was true.
No, it's great. I have no idea how many times he swings, and maybe we should count, because maybe it's close to 400. I wish I had asked myself that question before, because if we were close to a milestone, it would have been really fun to bury it at 406. Or when we were raising money for the film, just as an aside, we had a fundraiser where if you give $406, you get this. It was amounts that were tied to Ted Williams' things, because it's public television, so you raise money that way. I have no idea, but what I was getting at was this was a man whose ambition was to be known as the greatest hitter who ever lived. Whether or not he succeeded in that, it's open to discussion and debate, and but certainly that was the focus of his life. He was so obsessed and so compulsive about hitting and studying batting and weighing his bats and doing all these kind of really, for the time, way advanced. Nobody else was heating their bats to remove any excess moisture that had accumulated on the bat. But Ted was doing all those kinds of things. He was studying the hitters. He was practicing constantly. And actually, given his character and his personality, he really deeply resented it when people would say, greatest natural hitter who ever lived. Natural, no, like he really worked at it. But so that was very early on. I thought, like, let's come up with a motif that we can return to again and again of swinging, batting, hitting, and let's find a way of doing it. I hope gracefully and elegantly, where you don't feel like enough already with the hitting. So that's the answer to that question.
Yeah, it is. No. and I know earlier when we were talking about Seaver and Kuzman, I don't want to give it away, but there's a great moment, I think, from the '69 World Series with DiMaggio and Williams. It's brilliant. You have to really pay attention to it, though, folks, because it's a little subtle the way it's presented, but watch it, you'll get it.
Yeah, that's actually '91 All-Star game.
Oh, that was
where.
Okay, that was okay. I was thinking it was the same one that you were showing Kuzman and.
No, it's during that same sequence. We're talking about the Ted and Joe relationship,
right,
which was intense and fascinating and deeply competitive, obviously, given the natures of both those guys. And then we make the point that year at the '69 All-Star game, Joe was named the greatest living ball player. And one of our interviewees, Bob Costas, says, and for the rest of his life, he always insisted, it was in his contract, that when Joe DiMaggio showed up at a, opening of a fire station, he had to be introduced as the greatest living ball player. And we cut to the '91 All-Star game and we see these two legendary guys being feted on the 50th anniversary of the greatest season that either of them had. And Joe is introduced last and the greatest living ball player, and you see them walk out together. And you can imagine what is going through Ted's head as he takes, the back seat there.
No, it was a great moment. And, we were talking about how focused Ted was on heating his bats and always the practice swings and everything like that. One of the things I wasn't really clear if you sort of deal with this in the film, but was Ted a decent hitting coach? Was he ever really able to train anybody, or was what he had, he just couldn't really, he didn't know how to share it?
No, he was I think he was a great hitting coach. I think he loved to coach hitters, and he loved to talk hitting. He would talk hitting endlessly with anybody. And if you were interested in hitting, like, Wade Boggs or the other interviewees that we have in the film include Willie McCovey and Joey Votto. He never talked to Joey Votto about hitting, but he talked to McCovey about hitting, and would talk just for hours about hitting and the right approach. And, swing the bat on an upward plane and wait for your pitch, and you got to get the hips moving here, and here's where your elbows are pointing, and when you want to open up and don't open up, and all this really technical stuff, as well as the mind game of hitting, which he was also excellent at.
Wasn't the thing with Wade over the years that he was able to see the ball so much better than anyone else? I mean, he's one of those guys who could see the seams coming at him, and that was supposed to be very similar to Ted Williams, I think.
Yeah, I think both of them had excellent eyesight. Although, again, I think Ted would say, "Yeah, I had good eyesight, but it wasn't the eyesight; it was the work I put in." But yeah, I mean, his eyesight became kind of legendary, and whether it was 2015 or 2010, is variously reported as each. When he went into the Army, they did actual eye tests on him.
Might help explain his success in the Air Force. As a pilot,
yes.
Right.
Yeah. He was an incredible pilot. Doesn't explain his incredible success as a fisherman. I don't think that has as much to do with eyesight as patience and discipline. But I mean, he was obviously an incredible physical specimen. I mean, he is in he's in two Fishermen's Hall of Fame. He's in the Pilot's Hall of Fame. He flew 39 successful combat missions in Korea, so he was sort of 39-0, maybe with one tie where they clipped him and he has an adventurous landing. But he was, whatever he put his mind to, he was excellent at, and could succeed at the highest level as a physical presence.
Well, so there's a lot of great ball players out there. I mean, we're both obviously Tom Seaver guys. What drew you to invest the time and energy in a Ted Williams documentary? And I'm guessing from seeing McCovey and Dick Enberg, at the very least in the film, who are not with us anymore, that this took a while.
It did take a while. Is McCovey not with us?
I don't think he's with us. Willie, if you're still with us, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure he's not with us anymore.
I know he wasn't doing great when we
Yeah.
got him, but that's terrible. Enberg was doing great. It was crazy, and he died just a couple of weeks. It was really a shock.
Yeah.
But yes, it took a very long time. I was actually, since you're a Met fan, I will tell you, on Friday, the Friday of Game 3 of the 2015 World Series, I got a phone call. Can you meet a man named Al Tapper on Monday who wants to do an American Masters on Ted Williams? And this call came from American Masters, and Al Tapper was going to invest a little bit of money and get the thing rolling. And I said, yes, I'll go Monday. And Michael Cantor of American Masters said, great, we picked the spot. And then the next day, Michael Cantor called and said, you want to go to Game 5? So I went to Game 5 for 2 hours and 40 minutes, the greatest game I'd ever been to, until, miracle of miracles, Matt Harvey comes out for the ninth inning.
Yeah.
And I was just beside myself. And anyway, the next day, Al Tapper, we met, we hit it off. He said, let's do this. I said, great. And so it's from that moment till now. So November 2015 till July 2018, New York City, sirens. And hold on 1 second. Yeah. Oh, just do the whole house. Thanks. Okay. What's that? Okay. Thank you. That's
it's real life. I love it.
real life Terminator. So from November 2015, I don't know if you have the ability to edit, but if you want to cut out the Exterminator, you're welcome to. From November 2015 till really we absolutely finished about April 20th of this year, 2018, we worked on this. And the first interview we did was with Ben Bradley in February of 2016. Then we did Claudia Williams a couple months later, and then went into deep research and money raising, and then the last year or so have been going at it hard.
So it's Ben Bradley Jr., son of Ben Bradley from the Washington Post.
Ben Bradley Jr., son of Ben Bradley Sr. of the Washington Post. Both of them portrayed in Academy Award-winning movies. Mm-hmm. Ben Sr. by Jason Robards in All the Men, and Ben Jr. by John Slattery, also of Mad Men fame, in Spotlight.
I actually didn't know that. I did not realize that. And here's my question: all the hours in the editing suite, am I the only one who noticed that it sounded like John Hamm and Ben Bradley Jr. had the same voice?
It's so funny because somebody, first of all, I got a fact check about something that the narrator said, and I said, no, that actually wasn't the narrator, that was Ben Bradley. And then Al Tapper, we were doing a panel after the screening the other day, and he said, and I just love when John Hamm says this thing. Actually, it wasn't John Hamm, it's Ben Bradley. So to me, I don't hear it, but you are not the first.
Okay.
At least two other people have heard that.
It's interesting. One of them may be in the wrong business. Maybe some opportunities there that we didn't think about. Ted talks early on in the film about sex and baseball. I honestly had never really heard much talk about, other than baseball annies, that type of thing. But usually you hear about boxers and sex. They refrain from sex before a big match. Most of them anyway. But Ted's approach to baseball and sex was kind of a surprise, a little out of the blue.
Yeah, he tells a great story. Or Roger Angell tells the great baseball writer, New York writer Roger Angell tells a story that Ted told him and said, "You can't print this." And then he tells him this story, and which Roger Angell waited until Ted died before telling the story. Uh, and it is that he was mystified by all these young players who were chasing girls all the time and hitting 240. And he says, well, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but he says, Roger, I didn't get laid till the All-Star break in my second year. I was thinking about hitting all the time.
I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I just had to bring that up. The other thing that I thought was really tantalizing in the film, jumping ahead a bit, is when Ted gets into Cooperstown, the Baseball Hall of Fame. You would think, okay, this is another speech, completely not like any other speech, and you want to just give a hint of what that was about.
So it was 1966, and obviously in the middle of the civil rights movement in this country, and nobody asked him to say anything about it. And in fact, when they saw his notes for the speech beforehand, the Hall of Fame, the guys who ran the Hall of Fame said, "We'd rather you not get into this." And as Claudia says, you do not tell Ted Williams what he can and cannot do. Mm. So he got up there and said, baseball is an amazing game, and I think that the Hall of Fame should be open to the Negro League players who are not here simply because they never had the chance. Mm-hmm. And it was totally shocking and ahead of its time. And sure enough, because he said that a few years later, the Hall of Fame opened its doors to Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and those kinds of people who had played the Negro Leagues and been as good, if not better, than Ted and his contemporaries. And you do sort of think, well, where did that come from? Yeah. And the suggestion in the film, as Dick Flavin, the Red Sox poet laureate and a friend of Ted's in later life, says, when you think about politics and Ted Williams, he's sort of to the right of Attila the Hun, except when it comes to civil rights, because Ted had a secret that not all baseball fans in the 40s and 50s knew, which is that his mother was Mexican. And if he had looked like his brother, he said this, if he'd looked like his brother, he never would have been able to play in the major league. And if he'd had his mother's last name, it would have been iffy. So he hid the fact that he was Mexican. Not, I don't want to go too far, but he did not. He didn't talk about it. And I think it's because he saw that the prejudice that was done to the Mexicans in San Diego when he was growing up, that he said, this is ridiculous. People should be given the chance to prove, as he said in the speech, not just that they're as good as anyone else, but that they're better, or that they might be better, because he was so competitive. It was always in the competitive cast of his mind. But yeah, it's an incredible speech, an incredible moment that he did it.
And wasn't that within a year or two of Curt Flood and the reserve clause being broken down?
So that was 66. I guess Curt Flood was winter 69-70, I think.
Okay, all right. So it was a couple years off. All right, another big moment in baseball, but don't want to go too far off from Ted.
I can talk baseball all that.
Ted, you mentioned the fishing before, and I wanted to come back to the fishing. And I don't remember if it was Claudia or someone else who told the story about how he liked to cut open the fish and check the guts. It was Claudia, I think, and check the guts of the stomach, right?
It was Claudia, yeah. Right, yeah. He was obsessive about everything he did. So he would take the fish that he caught, and maybe other fishermen do this, I don't know, but he would go down into his little basement and take a knife and cut it open and see the contents of the fish so that he could know what they're eating, so that he could base his flies on what they naturally ate. And then he was, spend the next however many hours making the fly and making sure that fly looked just like the thing in the stomach. Yeah.
It was great. It was just a great story. And I thought, wow, that's genius. Why didn't I ever think about that? All the years I spent fishing in the same fishing hole in the same spot in New Jersey all the time. Why didn't I ever think? Anyway. And then kind of getting to the point of wrapping up here, why John Hamm as the narrator? I mean, he's a St. Louis boy, a St. Louis Cardinals guy. Wouldn't he be more of a Stan Musial type of guy?
Yeah, he would be more of a Stan Musial guy, and I even thought, like, it's interesting to think that Stan Musial was the man and Ted Williams was the kid.
Yeah.
Because Ted was such an overgrown, guileless, angry, crazy kind of immature guy. He lashed out at people and got in huge feuds with the fans and the press. John Hamm, because I couldn't think of anybody more associated with mid-20th century American masculinity than John Hamm. And he's got a great voice. And he is a baseball fan. And he's not a Red Sox fan, and he's not a Yankee fan. So I'm really interested in this film playing, obviously, not just for you and me and baseball fans, but for people who don't know baseball or sort of have a vague idea of baseball and never heard of Ted Williams, really. And so I thought that he would be a great representative to the whole country of this man, this icon, and what he meant to the country then, and maybe even now. One other thing I wanted to mention, because we were talking about the hitting, and how to see the hitting, film these recreations, and that's one of the things that we go back to, is you see Ted hitting again and again against a black background.
Was that John Hamm too?
No, that was not John Hamm. And up until a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you who it was, because there was a kind of concern around the player and the organization that he was with, that you don't want to freight a player as, oh, this guy thinks he's Ted Williams. But it's a guy who was, when we filmed them and when we cast them, in the minor league organization of the Houston Astros. And he was actually just called up on Saturday. His name is Kyle Tucker, and he, for a long time, scouts have said, God, that guy sort of looked like Ted Williams. And he's 6'4", 180. I think he started to work out, but in high school, especially, his body was long and lanky and just like Ted's. And he's got an absolutely gorgeous swing. So it was not John Hamm. It was Kyle Tucker, who is now playing left field for the Houston Astros.
Oh, what a great story. How cool.
Yeah.
And I had said to my wife, after all the swinging at the beginning and everything, I said, I wonder who got to play Ted. Who's in there swinging for? Because clearly, because of the technology, it was. I know it wasn't Ted, but I thought, man, right. I wonder how do you get somebody to play who can recreate Ted like that so perfectly? That was cool. Very cool.
Good. Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
All right. Well, listen, folks, you can see Ted Williams, the greatest hitter who ever lived, on your local PBS television station on Monday, July 23rd at 9 p.m. Now, if you miss it that night, you'll be able to see it anytime online at pbs.org/American Masters. That's all solid. pbs.org/American Masters, or on the PBS app. Nick, do you have either for yourself or for the film, is there a website, is there Twitter, Facebook, any of that kind of stuff where you want to send people?
I'm so glad you asked me that. Well, gee, there should be, shouldn't there?
Well,
you can go to the Facebook group, Nick Davis Productions, the Facebook group, and that's where I've been sending things out from. But I'm actually going to be live tweeting the broadcast through American Masters. That, I don't know, whatever their hashtag is. I assume it's American Masters. But it was just such a thrill to make the film, and I'm so excited for people to see it. And so glad that you liked it and wanted to talk.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot of fun. Now, is there a Tom Seaver film in the offing? Are we going to get that from you?
Let's hope. All
right.
Yeah. I know. The tragic film is June 15th, 1977, and that I've often thought, God, what a great setting for some kind of movie. Actually, whatever, like a coming of age story of a young boy whose dreams are ruined, and has to face maturity on that night would be fun. So
very cool. Well, Nick Davis, thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today. A lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
To believe her, a bad idea to believe her.